Well, spUN Debate is here today. We're so excited to welcome Francis, Apurva, and Jordan to the show. I have obviously worked with a few of you for something that I'm really excited about, and that's debate. But when we can bring it to space, that really opens it up for everyone. Tell everybody, and we'll start off with Francis, and then we'll go around kind of to Apurva and Jordan, a little bit about who you are, how you came to be involved in space, and what you do for spUN Debates.
Surely, I'm Francis Dellutri. I'm the National Space Society Director of Education. I've been involved with the NSS, as they say, for about 10 years. My background was I was in industry, several different industries, always STEM involved, and then went into the classroom and loved what I was doing in the classroom because I brought in real world experiences into the classroom. Always interested in space. I came from the Apollo time. And so a lot of wonderful things going on all the time. I never wanted to go myself, but I wanted to help people get there. And so that's what we're all about here with National Space Society. And I have gotten involved with the spUN Debates, which is space policy and universalization, since their beginning.
Well, that's great. Apurva, tell us a little bit about your involvement.
Hello, I'm Apurva, and my involvement with space just kind of happened. I know it sounds a little cliche, but it all started when I was looking at the stars, and my dad used to tell me stories. And then I ended up participating in the what was NASA's at the time space settlement contest, and we visited the ISTC with my team, which was really exciting. And that's when I met Francis, and that's where spUN Debate started.
Was that the first year? Is that the one that we were talking about earlier, where you went? Was that the first year?
That was the second year. So I was in St. Louis the year before. That's when I met Francis.
Got it.
Yeah.
Jordan, what about you?
Well, how could I not be interested in space, right? So I think, like most people, I've had a deep interest in space since I realized that you could actually look at pictures of what was out there and learn more about it. I got involved in the spUN Debate specifically through a group that the person who actually introduced me to space law was a part of. When I first found out that space law was a thing, I met this person, his name's AJ Link, at a program that we were at during law school in South Africa. And when he introduced himself, he said, "I'm a space lawyer." And I'll be honest, I laughed a little bit because I was like, that's made up. There's no such thing. It's interesting that you think you can do that, but there's no such thing as a space lawyer. Come to find out, I was very wrong. The next year, I had the opportunity to participate in the Manfred Lax Space Law MOOC competition, which was a great experience. And I got so much support as part of that process that I thought, okay, there's something more that we can do with this. And so with the support of a lot of organizations like the Space Court Foundation, I founded, and with the support of other students who helped a lot, we together founded the first space law organization at an HBCU at Howard University School of Law, which led to the founding of the first space law class at an HBCU law school, which is at Howard Law, which was taught by, full circle, AJ Link, who first introduced me to the concept of space law.
Kevin's always saying that it's a small world in space, and that kind of epitomizes what he's saying.
Space is almost infinite, but those people that are working with space, they tend to know each other.
Yep. And that's what I'm wondering. I've met you before, Kevin, as well.
Yes.
So we're kind of living that right now.
Right.
What do you do with spUN Debates? I know you got involved a little bit because the person told you about it, but what is your role now? And we'll kind of get to share, what is it that you're doing with the organization? Now you're not just debating, but you're helping to give other people that opportunity as well. And maybe we should start talking first with what spUN Debate is and why it got started.
Apurva, you want to start? Apurva is one of the co-founders of spUN Debates. So Apurva, you want to tell the story a bit?
Yep. So as I said earlier, in St. Louis, that was the first ISTC, which is International Space Development Conference, that I attended. Me and a friend of mine, Souvik, who is also a co-founder, we were listening to a presentation given by Dr. L.J. Edmonds on what universalization is. And it really inspired us. We just thought, we were like, why are we not doing this right now? Why are we not just listening to each other? And Francis was sitting a couple of chairs next to us, I think, and we stepped out and we said hi to LJ. We took a lot of photos, And then we just started talking to Francis, and we were like, what can we do to help spread the message, to start the conversation? That's what we called it in the first debate. We are trying to start a conversation, and that's what spun debates is all about. We're just trying to get the message out there and get people to start talking about what space would look like.
When you say get the message out, I know it's really about universalization, and that's a mouthful that I'm not really sure everybody understands. Can somebody kind of give us universalization theory in a nutshell?
Take it away, Apurva.
So universalization is essentially the idea that we all listen to each other, we all come to the table and try to work out our differences and just come to a solution together instead of fighting each other. With spun debates, we always call it a co-opetition and not a competition, because we're trying to cooperate with each other and try to find a middle ground, essentially.
Understood.
And then Jordan has joined us in the last couple of years. So Jordan, maybe if you could give your perspective, since you kind of came in after this started happening, but you've seen it in evidence.
Yes. So I started last year as the I think second project manager after somebody who had gotten the baton pretty far, handed it off for the first university level spun debate. So the high school debate's been going on for
2018.
Yeah, so for a while at this point. And so last year was the first university level debate. And so me being from DC, having gone to school in DC, and being interested in student debate, I thought I could be helpful. So when the opportunity came across in a meeting that I was a part of, Michelle Hanlon, asked if anybody
we love her. We've done a podcast with her. She was immediately who I was thinking of when you're talking about space law.
Yeah, so she, in a group that I'm part of, that she's a part of, she mentioned the opportunity, and I said, oh, I would love to be helpful. And I hope Francis can tell you, I hope I've been being helpful ever since. So
I'm going to keep you. Yes, I'm going to keep you.
we know you're a moderator and a judge.
Yeah, last year I put on a lot of hats last year. I was a moderator, I was a judge, I was helping get stuff together. We got it together, and it was hard work. It was really hard work to get that together last year for the first competition. And we've been working really hard this year as well to get things together. And we're really excited about where we've gotten to. It's been hard fought, but we have done a lot. And I'll take this opportunity to put on record the amount of work that Francis does on behalf of this competition. Truly is phenomenal. And just her dedication and her sincerity, it's just truly, truly phenomenal. So I want to go on record with that. I have worked very hard.
That shout out. I know.
Of her leadership.
So Apurva is the high school program manager of the spun debates. Jordan is the university program manager.
Got it. So that's how we're spinning out, so to speak, in spun debate. No, and Jordan, you're right. I recognize I've been able to be part of it when it was in the earlier, the on stage, when you were still allowing some of our more precocious middle school students to get involved versus where you guys are now. And I've seen it really morph and grow into something it's pretty incredible. But it must be, Francis, and this one has to go to you. You must have so many challenges with getting, you obviously need debaters, but let's start with the fact that you're going to need judges and moderators. How do you, or where do you get the people behind the scenes who are ultimately going to be the mentors and because you need to have adults and students of varying degrees just to even get this off the ground. So how do you do that? Oh,
and they're all in different time zones.
Yeah.
Yes. And they're all in different time zones.
Well, there are a lot of moving parts to this program. The one thing that's so exciting to me is the opportunity it brings people together who have an interest in what we're doing. And that's the biggest motivator, I think, of all. And once they hear about it, then they find out someone who else might be interested. So it's building that base. And that's taken us, this is, 7 years now with the high school group. University group is just 2 years in. So we're continuing to build that base, and to the biggest one is letting the debaters know of the possibility, because in the program, we have people from different countries on the debate team. They've never met, and they may never meet. And they're in different time zones, as you're correct. And so we are trying to find a way to kind of move through that and some people record meetings and then they play it back at a later time. And thank you, electronics, because we're 100% virtual. So that's kind of how it happens. And it takes a lot of plan A, B, C, D, as I think Corbin Jordan can say. And sometimes we're on like plan F or K.
So you have to advertise, it sounds like, or you share some kind of proposal online with students. Do you have a network of people that have done it before, or how do you get it in front of the eyes? And this is to anyone. How do you get it in front of eyes of countries and classes and students who've never done it before?
Purva, you want to handle that one?
Sure. So in terms of people behind the scenes, a lot of times we'll have veteran debaters who still want to be involved with the program, who will come through, and they're fantastic volunteers. They truly help us so much. The programs, certainly we could not do all this without them. So that's how we get all the behind the scenes people. We try to keep a 2-year limit on how many times the debaters can participate in the tournament. So once it's up, if a lot of people come and say, hey, I really want to volunteer, this meant a lot to me, which is always so great to hear. And word of mouth has been really powerful for us so far. All these volunteers who have done this before, they just love spreading the word. They spread to different schools in their area, and just a lot of volunteers doing fantastic work has been most of how we've gotten our outreach. But we are, expanding our social media. We're trying to do all that stuff too, but we're slowly getting there.
What are the countries that are represented?
We've had 23 different countries around the world that have been represented. Over 200 students have gone through our program. That does not include the university program. This year, Jordan, where are those students coming from, those applicants coming from?
We've got applicants from South Africa, Botswana, India, United States. So far, I think for the university, that's our coverage right now.
Impressive, though. I mean, that's really impressive to be able to say you have those. That's really the epitome of universalization, right? Voices, everyone's being heard at some point. So what do you think some of the biggest, obviously the challenges are getting the people there and to understand how to do that, but I know it has to be also not just the students, but do you have to rely heavily on the NSS for kind of like some of the mentor support, or for the people providing some of the content?
We've done a couple of things. The first couple of years, we did rely on NSS for mentor support. This year, we do have them involved in mentoring sessions before, as the teams are kind of coming together. But in terms of judges, we found, and coaches, we found if we have NSS people there, they're a little biased. So, understandably so. So we had to kind of go to a forum for those mentors and coaches and judges that didn't have that. They were, it was unintentional, I think, many times, but just come through. So we really wanted those judges to really score those teams in terms of their debating prowess and effectiveness, regardless if they have their information correct. So certainly through their debates, they're giving us evidence that holds up their arguments. But that's been an interesting, would you say?
Well, I think it's been good,
ladies
though.
and gentlemen, our learning curve that we've experienced.
Well, there's two things going on, right? There's the nature of the content you deliver, factual, and then humans it's easy to be biased, right? And you may already have a position on the question at hand as a judge. You may already feel strongly about it. It's very difficult as someone who did some of that to try to set aside what I think is right and just listen to it's more like an art, I think, and a craft, right? The skills of debating versus just can you regurgitate
well
facts.
It's also the resolution. I noticed the resolution this year was worded in a way like it's not going to be one that anyone from NSS or anyone else would disagree with. When we're talking about research, it is the case that we need it. It's just about how we solve that problem of what's going to happen here on Earth eventually, right? So for those who are unfamiliar, the resolution has to do with the idea of whether or not we should limit space research to things that would primarily help Earth and humanity now versus like maybe getting something like for future settlements or beyond. And it's been tough trying to explain even to the students that I'm working with how to wrap their head around that resolution. Because
I say every dollar spent in space is a dollar spent on Earth for the to help Earth. But I'm already biased. I'm just glad I'm not a judge.
Well, my students are thinking that it
That's a
means
good illustration.
focusing on Earth to the exclusion of everything else. I'm like, no, everything else is still helping Earth. It's been difficult. So, but I have to say, I've watched it change and morph throughout the years. And I think the amount of time that you're putting in is obvious because it's running really well. So
yeah, let me ask the two lieutenants a question. Have you guys read Robert Zubrin's The Case for Space?
No, sir.
Oh my goodness, it's a fantastic read. Not too technical, but he's like a pragmatic. He uses a lot of numbers and facts and technology. He talks about Musk and the economic basis for exploration and how viable it is based on technology, not going out towards Star Trek. I mean, like in the here and now. It's a very interesting read. Maybe Miss Francis, I know you read it, but it's a fantastic read that might lend itself to some of our spun conversations.
One of the prerequisites for our resolution, and Apurva, please speak to this as well, because Apurva was involved in the resolution build this year. Jordan didn't have a chance to get into that, but the resolution has to have a timeliness. And what is that timeliness, Apurva? What is it, 5 to 10 years or something?
Yeah, we thought 10 years. It should be relevant in the next 10 years.
Yeah. So that's another caveat. Instead of just saying, should we settle space, but rather, what about this issue in the next 5 to 10 years? And so that's also something a little sticky to do. Apurva, you want to talk a little bit about how that resolution is determined?
Yeah, it is a really lengthy process because, as you know, there's so many things that we could talk about with space. So narrowing it down is always a challenge. I think we had about 6 to 8 people on the committee, and we all came through with so many ideas. And it took a couple of months for us to pull ourselves together and decide on this. And the other challenge that we have encountered is just how to word a resolution in a way that makes it, favorable to both the pro and the con side. That's always a real challenge with debates, is we don't want it to get lopsided, but sometimes so that was a challenge we tried to deal with this year.
I will say that I appreciate that very much. I think it's interesting that you guys have so many quality students from countries that aren't really known sometimes for having big space programs. I've always, when I visited ISDC and I see all the students there, not counting the US or Japan or India or, Europe, but there are some great students there from countries that have very little in space already. I think that's a good sign, right? When nations that maybe don't have a large space program are excited about what's going to happen in space. Space is getting democratized big time in a hurry.
It's interesting that you say that. We made a sizzle video, to encourage people to take a look at the spun debates. And this year it was focused on university. And so Jordan, maybe speak on that. He was our narrator on that. And the focus was quite different than what we had before. So Jordan, you want to speak to that a bit?
Sure. So just focusing on the opportunity that space presents really to everybody. And I think that wonder that I think is foundational to what brings, I imagine, most of us and most people to space. That's just human. I mean, that you can find that anywhere. So a lot of times people just haven't had an opportunity or an opening that's accessible to them to get into the space sector broadly, so to speak. Most people they're like, I have this interest, I love space, but there's just it's like me, I was in law school, I had a pathway, but I didn't even recognize it. When somebody said space lawyer, I thought it was like a joke because we just haven't been exposed to the road that can bring us there. If
more resources, mentors, opportunities, what's the path to get there? I agree with you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And
So
the
that's
path
kind of
is so varied. It's not just the STEM lines, but you need everybody. You need those space lawyers to be figuring out how in the world we're going to juggle all this together.
You know, I think with the students we work with, some of the really good work we've gotten are from our artists.
Mhm.
You know, you guys talk about wonder, a sense of wonder, and what could be. That lends itself real well to the artist, I think.
Jordan, you wanted to comment earlier, and I know that we probably cut you off there. Did you want to add anything to what we were just saying, or?
No, not at
Okay,
all.
sorry. I thought it just might have had to do with essentially how you're reaching out to them. But I think one thing I'd like to kind of pivot towards a little bit is your opportunities, not just for students, but for teachers as well. So I know they have to, with your SPUN students, they have to kind of go through some protocol. They have to fill out an application, but they have to agree to read some curriculum and background. And I think that curriculum is part of Space Edge, or at least it's within there. So what are some of the requirements for proving to you that they are ready to take on such a challenge? Or how can maybe even some of the teachers or the debate coaches who work with these students access some of that information?
Apurva, you want to do this one too?
I think it's your field.
My field. Okay. The high school debaters, sometimes we get people who've never debated. And this is about universalization, which says everyone's welcome to that table. And so we've started a program to bring those students that may be novice debaters, or they may have debated a little bit, or they may actually be veterans. And so through their application, we are able to determine which category they fit in. And then they're led to a online course that is targeted so that it gives them what they need. For the beginners and novices, is to learn the jargon, to learn how a debate works, some of the do's and don'ts, that sort of thing. It talks about the concept of universalization. For the veterans, we look at how to be a leader in debate, which is really important because those leaders, veterans, are the ones that pave the way for the novices and the beginners to really enjoy what they're doing and to see they can do it, because the veterans were novices at one point. So I wanted to ask Jordan to talk a little bit more about the universalization concept when we talk about the university level versus the high school level.
So at the university level, we really want there is an ethos to the debate. It's not just about sort of debating issues from just any grounding point. The grounding point of the entire debate is universalization. So we're working hard to make sure that the debaters, it's a complex concept. And so it can be difficult to wrap your mind around quickly. And so we're working hard this year to make sure that we are clearly explaining to the debaters what it is that we're looking for from them. And what we're looking for from them is to debate these issues within the context of universalization. And so we want them to be thinking about how we as people, as human beings, come together and look at things from a mutual interest point, not from the
value, right? We value universalization
yes,
as a way to achieve that. Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. And looking at it from that perspective. So not necessarily as much of a, national perspective, or as much of a, my group perspective, thinking about things from the perspective of how would I look at this if I'm looking at humans as humans, and thinking about it from just a sort of not quite humanism, but a similar type of standpoint. And we want to make sure that, and it's a mouthful to say all that. And so one thing that we're working on is figuring out how to truncate that and get it across simply to the students so that they can have an effective debate from that grounding point.
Maybe I'm using the wrong words. I'm going to brute force the way my brain is. It space equity really what we're talking about here? Giving people, all people, a shot at what the promise, the unlimited resources, the unlimited freedom, the unlimited space to spread out is that a fair way to describe it, or is there a better way to describe it?
I think
Um,
that in an ideal world, yes. However, certainly, space is pretty hostile. And to put people or a group of people in a certain situation where they might be at disadvantage because we brought everybody in at the same time is a problem. So certainly as we work further into who goes to space and how long they stay and what they do when they're there, that brings into the mix what type of people are needed. And so I think there is some understanding of personalities, of skills, of how things will look differently when you're there, and you can't come home easily,
Right. And I should clarify, I'm thinking about, the US is going to be in space, and China and Europe and Japan, but there are many nations that don't have a lot of representation there. I feel like when I'm talking about space equity, I'm talking about, like Apurva said, everyone gets a shot at least having some input. I was a little bit, I did not know we were going to send a Canadian up on our first mission around the moon, but there's 4 astronauts, 3 Americans and 1 Canadian. So that's in my mind, I'm like, wow, I was a little surprised at that, but that was just announced today. So I guess we've just dated our podcast recording. NASA announced which astronauts would go
But
on.
why were you
Artemis
surprised
2.
by it? I mean, maybe
I
that's
didn't
the
think
deeper
we'd send,
question.
I
Why
didn't
were you
think,
surprised?
yes, I did not think we'd send a Canadian on our first crewed mission around the moon.
So for some reason, those people made the right mix, and that's what universalization brings to the table, not just
True.
an
And-
assumption is what you were talking about, who goes and who doesn't get to go and what people are offered.
Right. But
so-
the reason that the biggest reasons that will increase equity in space is the cost per kilogram of access to space going down. When space becomes more affordable, then a lot more people can go to space. So I think that's that's again, Zubrin was really insightful in, let's just say Starship works as well as Falcon 9 has. The cost per kilogram of getting people to space suddenly becomes very affordable. It becomes more like jet airliner than,
Oh, sure. Absolutely, than a rocket. I think too, with the SPUN debates, because we're seeing students from so many different countries, this is giving them an opportunity to get into the conversation about their possibilities, whatever discipline that might be. And so it brings the possibilities for them, but also the possibilities of the people who are placing people in line to consider these other locations, these other incubators of people who would like to go.
Well, it makes me think of something you were mentioning earlier, Francis, about the idea that some of the former students become leaders. They can kind of become mentors in the groups. And one of the things I've noticed, and maybe this kind of speaks to what you're saying now about, those different cultural differences. It's interesting to watch them work together, because it's not just about a debate at the end of the day. It's about how do we, with different customs and different challenges and different things that we contribute, how do we work together? And I've always found it fascinating because I work with American students, but I'm always impressed by the level of respect that especially students from other countries have, more so than American students, of not just the people that are working with them, or for them rather, but with them. So like their own teammates. And it actually, even though that's a positive, it's also sometimes a challenge, because what I'm noticing is because they are so used to being very respectful, particularly of their teacher or their coach or whatever, there's also a reluctance at time to decide to say, no, I'm going to lead you because we all have equal input. And that's interesting because yes, I do rely like on the student on my team who's a little bit more experienced. I'm like, no, I need you to lead this group. I need you to email your teammates and tell them they got to get busy. And he's like, well, I will try, but it's interesting. As I guess that's what I'm saying is I think that what you're doing that's so great by giving them the opportunity is they're going to learn how to work with different cultures, whatever field they go into, which ultimately is universalization too. It doesn't have to be in space. The idea of how everybody has a voice.
That's a big part of our concept of universalization is, as Apurva mentioned, that communication, cooperation, finding creativity, because there's so much different parts of creativity to come together in the formation of an argument, for debate, or in the build of an aircraft or a rocket craft. That's all those things are important because there is this respect, there's this tolerance. It's not just going to be my way, but I need to cooperate with all to make things come together.
Well, and you know, what's interesting too about that point, they are used to working individually, trying to figure out how they take their strengths as individuals and blend it into like a four-headed argument, because that's really what you would normally see out of one argument. You're trying to get four students to work together and say, okay, here's my part, but I also recognize that I have to know your argument as well if I'm going to be able to defend anything. So it is I think that's the most fascinating and rewarding parts about working with the groups of students, is seeing how ultimately those cultures and customs have to help each other.
I think the irony, Ms. Francis, is that it's the National Space Society, and yet you have so many thousands of kids and folks involved that are not from the U.S.
The International Space Society.
Right. It's really a misnomer if you think about it. Between Porba mentioned the space settlement contest, thousands and thousands of students from all over the world enter that. So I think you have a lot to be, frankly, I think you have a lot to be proud of for what you've started. And Space Edge Academy, I know that.
Yeah, I want to talk about that a little bit. And I know for the sake of time, because I want to be respectful of it. But before we go to like that final question, which is always what advice do you have for students who might be interested in something like this, right? So that's your lead in. But let's talk about Space Edge for our teacher listeners. What's available for them if they are interested in maybe looking at, maybe not a debate, but they want to bring the ethics of future settlements or just space work in general to their classrooms?
SpaceEdge.academy, that's Space Edge, SPACEDGE.academy, is our online platform. And on that platform is a Moodle learning management system. There are lessons, courses, activities, contests, challenges, all sorts of resources that are free to the world. And students and teachers can go there. It started about 12 years ago for teachers, and we found out students were going directly there. So we do vet everyone who comes into the Academy for registration to use those courses. And then we found out that adults are also going in and just finding out about things. And it's the fundamentals. It might be the fundamentals of some astronomy concept. 3D printing is a course we have in there. We have a lesson on how regolith, like a moon, a simulant regolith, absorbs in 0G, that was run by teachers who are in a 0G flight here on the Earth, off of the Earth. And all those things are available, and they a teacher can use them full. They can take pieces of them. That's what I would do when I was in the classroom, is I was always looking, I need something for next week or tomorrow.
Yes.
That might fill this gap. And so I go looking. And so that's what they can do. Right now, in the last year, we've had 1.9 million users of SpaceEdge.academy in over 100 countries. So we're really excited where that goes. And that's where the spUN online course was for our debaters. So.
Fantastic. Well, again, the last question we have students who listen, we have parents who listen, we have other teachers, space enthusiasts and things. If we had some students or parents who might have their children on the edge of how do I get involved in spUN debates? I want to do this next year. What should they do? Where do they go? What advice do you have for them? And let's start with Jordan for this, and we'll revolve our way back.
Sure. Well, to learn more about the spUN debates, and I hope I'll send you these links, and maybe we can put them in the description.
I will put them in them.
Awesome.
Yep.
So this first link is space.nss.org/spUN debates. That's SPUN-debates. That's a website where you can learn more about the spUN debate program of the National Space Society more generally. To apply, so we're still taking applications for the university level spUN debates. The high school level has closed. The university level, we are still taking applications, but that's going to close up very soon. And so if you're interested in sending an application, you can do that. You can find the information going through that link that I shared before. You can go directly to a link that I will send you that begins with spaceedge.academy/course, then /view.php ID =296. Not perfect, but that's what we have. So
I think also for shortening of that, just go to spaceedge.academy, go to contest and challenges, university debates. It'll be a drop down.
And you'll send me all these links, right, Jordan?
I will
So
send you
I'll
the
definitely
links,
put them
yes.
in the description.
Yes. And if you're planning to apply, I recommend that you email me at jordan.strudwick@nss.org. That's JORDAN.STRUDWICK@nss.org. Just email me so that I know that we should be awaiting your application. Even if you're not going to be able to prepare it for another week or so, we could potentially give you that time, but I need to know that the application is coming in so that we know not to close things off while you're still in the pipeline. So again, that's jordan.strudwick@nss.org, and I will send over.
Yep, I'll cut and paste, put them right into the descriptive notes. I appreciate that. All right.
And if you happen to come across this after the debate is already closed, you can still email and we'll get you involved next year somehow. So we'll know that you want to be involved and we'll keep in touch.
Perfect. Is there an age limit? So it's like, I know they can do it twice, but like university, they can be in their master's or PhD program, or is it like geared towards an age group?
That's right. Yes. Any university student. So no matter your age is not material. What program?
I'm a university student.
Then you're welcome. Then you're welcome.
Wow, see, there you go. You can,
oh my goodness. Yes.
Gosh, that's the last thing you want.
No.
Apurva, what about you? What about you? What are some words of advice that you have for people who might want to be interested? Maybe they're nervous about it.
So a couple of things. High school debates, as Jordan said, has closed its applications. We have the teams together and we're very excited for this year's debate. The final debate is actually going to be on May 27th, and we're going to live stream it. It's always a really engaging and thrilling debate to watch. So please check that out. We'll also send some links to Shauna as well. But if you're interested in next year, and Shauna mentioned something about how sometimes we can be reluctant. And speaking from experience, I was a very reluctant person. I was very hesitant, and just, I guess, words of advice would be, don't feel so intimidated by people in general. They seem intimidating. I was really hesitant to approach Francis at first, but I'm really, really grateful that me and Sorry decided to sit down and just write one email. That changed my life, I think. So that's the only advice I have. Just take a step. You never know. And you can also email me anytime at apurva.br@nss.org. I will send the email to Shauna as well.
Or even Jordan, if you want to throw all of her links, if we could do it in one, then it'll be easy for me just to go and cut and paste and put it in. That'd be awesome. Well, Francis, you get the final word. So what do we need to know for those who might be on the fence, or about why we should join spUN Debate?
I feel that there's an opportunity for everyone. This year with the high school, we're a little bit further beyond with our tournament coming up very soon. With the university, there's still some opportunity. If anyone is interested in what we do at NSS in terms of the education group, please email me, Francis Dellutri @nss.org, or SpaceEdge at nss.org, SpaceEdge Academy at nss.org. So any of those work. If you've got a question or whatever, love to hear from you.
And there's a website too, which I know we'll get from Jordan as well. People can go, there's a lot of information on there. And I would say for any debate coaches who are listening, I know that's always an area where we could definitely use some help. I have found it to be incredibly rewarding for a number of reasons, but primarily it reminds you of what you love about the event. And I know there's always a question like, what format are we using? Are we using which country's format of debate? But they're very, very good about setting that format up in general. If you're an American debate, it looks a lot like a public forum. Kind of almost like a combination public forum, Lincoln Douglas, to give you a general idea of that. And you can set your own hours. So I would encourage debate coaches to just give it a shot. You don't have to know anything about space. It really is just about helping the students speak up.
The university group is the World Schools debate format.
Oh, right. Okay,
cool.
Yeah, that's a common one.
That's a new one for this year too. So
yeah, no, that's perfect. Yeah, World Schools is one that I got to see years ago, and I was shocked by how just how impressive it was. It looks like parliamentarian style. It's one that we do have here in the States, but like, you know, I used to work with middle school, so we don't see it a lot. It's a good one. It's a good one to familiarize with. Well, I want to thank each of you for spending this time today. You know, this is, I know the second time we've had Francis, and I know Purva, I've come to know you over the few years, and it was a pleasure to meet you, Jordan, as well. So thank you for giving us your time today. We look forward to talking with you and working with you soon.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.